Talked a lot about some of the things that Mississippi State and Ole Miss have coming back. Things that you like. Will Rogers coming back, and he threw for 11 million yards last year.
I like the way he throwed the ball.
Do you?
Yeah, got better at that as the year went on.
Yes, thank you.
At throating it, yeah.
Yes.
Big throater of the ball.
He throated it well. You like Ole Miss's running back room. Feels like there's some depth there. You like some pieces on the offensive line. So it's fun and easy to talk about the players or the position groups that you like going into the year. Let's flip the other side, though. Where is your greatest area of concern for Mississippi State, for Ole Miss, going into the 2022 season? Hey, Dad, let's start with Mississippi State. Position group, personnel, individual or collectively, that is your biggest concern going into 2022?
Feels like it still has to be the tackles because you just don't know what you've got there. You haven't seen them in SEC play. The guys who got the most first-team reps at tackle during the spring are a junior college transfer, albeit the nation's #1 junior college offensive tackle, and a redshirt freshman who played a little bit last year, but not a ton. State's good on the interior. They bring back all 3 starters there. But, you're replacing the #9 overall pick and a guy that, for better or worse, started every game at right tackle. That's a lot of experience and a lot of reps you've got to replace. And this is an offense that wants to pass, 600-plus times in a season. Those 2 guys have got to be up to the challenge of facing, elite passer. Will Anderson is still in your schedule. Somebody's got to protect Will Rogers from that guy. So, yeah, I don't see how you can look at this roster and what they've done, what they brought back combined with what they've done in the portal, and not say, well, that's the one area where they're still really shaky.
Mississippi State allowed 34 sacks last year with a top 10 NFL draft pick. So you said good on the interior, guard, center, guard. How many of those sacks were from the outside versus the inside? I mean, not 30, an exact number.
I think 32 of them for Sam Williams against Scott Lashley. I'm pretty sure.
It was 32 of the 34.
32 of the 34, and then the other 2 were Will Anderson. Like I said, Will Anderson had a great game against Mississippi State. Sam Williams had a great game against Mississippi State. State gave up some pressure on the interior. Obviously, I don't know the numbers right off the top of my head, but, in the SEC, you face elite edge rushers. So, you've got to be able to block those guys. So we'll see for Mississippi State. But the other thing to consider, though, Richard, is you had 34, and I'm going to have to see how quickly I can do this, 34 sacks. It may seem like a lot, but when we're talking about over 600 attempts,
yeah,
it's not as bad as you think.
704 passing attempts for Mississippi State last year.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But that's what Mississippi State does.
Well, and here's the next layer to that. There was only one team worse than Mississippi State last year in explosive plays. Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So you're saying even when there weren't sacks, there was pressure, and that limited the time to stand in the pocket and make big plays down the field?
Yeah, well, and part of that is the offense as well. They are not entirely dependent on it. Their explosive play rate is small, in part because of the offense, but also the time and development to create explosive plays wasn't there near as much as it should have been. So
they're a 3 yards on a cloud of dust team. They just do it through the air.
Yeah. But that's my concern is, can they be explosive? Because if not, it's going to look a lot like last year. And who are those guys going to be? Now, they've added raw talent in the portal. You lose Polk, you lose Heath. Those are talented guys, one far, far, far more productive than the other. But you should feel good about, on paper, what you have in the receiver room based on what you've added via transfer portal. They're less proven, but you like the pedigree in which they came. A 4-star, big-bodied wide receiver that Kirby Smart signed, he did that for a reason. You like, on paper, what that addition is.
Sure.
But it's explosion for me. If they can't add the explosive element to their offense this season, whether it comes from wide receiver or protecting better, it's going to look the same as it did a year ago.
Well, and I think ultimately the question that I was asking, hey, Dad, when I was asking about where those sacks came from, but you kind of identified tackle specifically, and I wondered if it should actually be a little bit more general where you're saying offensive line.
No, because like I said, I feel good about the interior. I think Winston Sharp coming back is a huge boost. Cole Smith and Cam Jones are good guards. I feel good there. It's interesting that Borky brought up the explosive thing, too. We talk about that a little bit. We decided to have just like a little fun hypothetical on tomorrow's Thunder and Lightning of could Will Rogers break Joe Burrow's single-season passing record in 13 games? Because, Burrow did it in 15. And, we did all the numbers and all that, but the main concern was this. Rogers completed 74% of his passes last year. He was completing, I think, 75% before the Egg Bowl, and then the last 2 games he was down. So it's not a question of can you complete more passes to get more yards. 75% is really good. It's more about can those passes bigger plays.
Average 12 to 14 yards or 8 to 9 yards instead of 5 to 7.
Exactly. Also, fun stat. By the end of this season, Mississippi State will have a new all-time leading receiver, and it will be a running back. It's going to be Jaquavius Marks. He's only 60 catches off of Fred Ross.
So you mean in terms of receptions?
Yes.
Okay, not receiving yards. Well, and right. I think, again, part of the reason that I ask, about you making it narrow versus broader, because if you ask me position group that concerns you most about Ole Miss, I mean, the obvious answer would be quarterback, right? Because you just lost a quarterback to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the answer for me. The answer for me is wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And I guess, maybe I should be more specific and like, well, it's slot receiver or it's the outside, it's the X or the Y or, whatever. But it's collective for me. Because when Ole Miss dealt with injuries in the passing game, the offense changed last year. When Mingo and Drummond were out for an extended period of time, it changed who they were offensively. There was another guy that was out too, right? It wasn't just Mingo. Was it Mingo? Oh, Mingo and Drummond and Sanders. Wasn't there a combination where they missed, all 3 of those guys missed a couple of games, and then Sanders came back, and Mingo and Drummond, it took a while longer to get back. When all 3 of those guys were healthy and on the field, a pretty dang explosive offense. Yeah. But even that version of the offense was a little limited because they weren't explosive at tight end like they were the year before with Kenny Yeboah.
And like they should be this year.
And like they should be this year with Michael Trigg. And so there are pieces there in the wide receiver group. But health is a concern. You get 2 or 3 wide receivers that could not participate in spring because of health and a couple of guys that had surgery because of foot injuries. The expectation is that those guys are going to be ready to go by the time fall camp rolls around. But you had no freshman a year ago that stepped up and made any kind of a difference. And so you're kind of relying on some transfers and some new guys and some freshmen getting better and health. I think there's a little reason to be concerned with the pass-catching guys for Ole Miss this